one of the key things that people have seen during the conference this week is that since the agreement was negotiated in 2012, we've gone from getting all the decision-making structures and people in place to actually making these decisions, to showing these kinds of results. There have been a lot of results. One of the things is we are cleaning up our toxic hotspot areas of concern. There are people in communities around the Great Lakes that live around working harbors and rivers that have been waiting a long time, acting a long time, for decades, to get their communities back on the grid. These communities are vibrant again. They're no longer living under this cloud of toxic contamination from decades ago. I think that's one thing that people heard. We are being preventative. We are trying to do better and better at proactively scanning the horizon to see what our next threats are and get out in front of them. Asian carp has been one area where I think we've been successful. Silver carp and bighead carp, which had been moving up the Illinois River system toward Chicago and toward Lake Michigan. We've been able to beat them back, to thin their populations, to reduce pressure on them migrating toward Lake Michigan. However, we haven't succeeded. We are being successful for right now. That battle will continue. But we're still in a much better position than we were 7 years ago, 6 years ago, when there was panic that Asian carp, bighead, and silver in particular were on the brink of getting into the Great Lakes. We've got a long way to go. We've seen grass carp pop up in places that they haven't been before, and we need to make sure we're controlling those. So those are just a couple that come to mind where I think we've seen results, things that we can show people that the governments are doing in order to fulfill the commitment under the agreement, which is to restore, protect, and maintain the integrity, the biological integrity of the Great Lakes. I think one of the things that people heard during this conference was, in terms of toxics, we're seeing those levels go down. That's a huge deal. Why is it a big deal? Because some of these toxics actually impact more than one generation. There are fish consumption advisories out there for children, mothers, women of childbearing age who eat lots of Great Lakes fish, don't want to pass those contaminants on to their kids. And those toxicity levels are going down. It's going to take some time until we're at the point where we can eat as much fish as we want and as our customs allow. But that's an emerging good news story in terms of, are we doing better on that front? Yes, we are. When it comes to harmful algae, we're not doing so well. We need to do better. Lake Erie is kind of proof positive, ground zero, for why we need to do better in reducing particularly agricultural nutrients running off into our waterways that get into these shallow, warm, sensitive waters around the Great Lakes. Are we reaching everybody? No, we're not. Do we have to educate people a lot more about the work that needs to be done? Absolutely we do. This is one of the, I work on a lot of thorny issues, invasive species and toxic hotspot cleanups, and this one is one of the thorniest that I've ever seen in 30 years of doing Great Lakes work. It is going to take time. It took us a while to get into this jam. I think it's going to take us a while to get out, but we're working on it, and I am very optimistic we're going to get there. It's all about action. One of the things we have to be careful about is we are investing tens of millions of dollars a year, U.S., particularly in the Maumee River watershed. We need to make sure that those dollars aren't just thrown at the problem, because sometimes you need a little bit of talk to make sure those investments are going to be smart. And if you do that coordination up front, which is always tough, but if you do that up front, it can mean that you're not taking one step forward, 2 steps back in the long run. Get involved with others who share your concerns. If it's a group of neighbors who's concerned about their local beach, get together. Power through numbers is what I'm trying to say. There are a lot of organizations out there. We have advisory committees and advisory boards that help recommend action to the governments. There's no shortage of ways to get involved. And here's probably my number one recommendation is if you out there feel like, I'm not an expert, what can I possibly do? This seems too big. I promise you, we all start somewhere. I started as a volunteer and knew absolutely nothing. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. I just think it just takes a little bit of tenacity, a little bit of persistence. But what matters is that you care about the lakes and you want to keep helping them.